Welcome back, Trekkie friends, to Hailing Frequencies podcast and the good, the bad, and the batshit. Today, looking at the very short trek, Worst Contact. I am one of your hosts, Stu.
I'm your other host, Alastair. Hey, Stu, how's it going?
Hey, it's going really well. Today's been a great day for new things dropping, because today is, as we're recording, we had the new Lower Decks drop. There was a new Salad Fingers out today.
Wait, what? How have I not heard about this?
I can't answer that, but yeah, there was a new Salad Fingers drop today on Newgrounds. So that's exciting.
I can relive my youth. Go and check it out.
Yeah. Well, it has been going for 20 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think I was in high school when the first one came out. So yeah, feeling old.
And this is the last ever Hailing Frequencies podcast. Not that you're making me feel old or anything, but you know. But yeah, so do you want to tell the listeners what a solid? I know this is not a Solid Fingers podcast, but tell the listeners what Solid Fingers is, in case anybody doesn't know.
So Salad Fingers is a series of animated shorts, much like the very short treks that we're talking about, but funny. And it started by a British chap, I believe, called Mark Frith, the Salad Fingers creator's name.
Mark Frith or John Frith? It's something Frith, isn't it?
Apologies to you, Salad Fingers overlord, if we have gotten your name wrong, but it's a very off the wall, very kind of dark humor, little piece of animation that was, I think, fair to say, like very much the kind of viral video of its day. Really, like it was a huge kind of. I was sort of just about heading to university when that came out, and it was a like very big cultural thing amongst people of that age when I came across it. So, and I think it's been a while, right, since the last one. I mean, he's dropped from making a few when the animations first started to one every sort of 5 or 6 years, if I remember correctly. So. So yes, hence my surprise when Stu announced that there was a new one that's been released today.
Well, this is number 13 that's out, but it's very dark, very gory, and as you rightly say, very funny if you've got a twisted sense of humor, which definitely I do. It's kind of up there with "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared." From my point of view. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. So sorry, I kind of feel like I threw you under a bus there, because Solid Fingers is incredibly difficult to explain to anyone who doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, I perhaps why I have wound up not giving the most in-depth explanation. Go and watch it. That's the best way to understand what Salad Fingers is.
But wait until this video's over before you go and watch it. That's
or at least pause and come back. Come on.
At least. Yeah, so we're here today to talk about the very latest, very short trek, Worst Contact. This is the third in the episode, but before we say anything about it at all, we need to go straight to Red Alert, because we will be dropping those spoilers like we drop the bass. I have no idea what I'm talking about there. That's a hip hop reference, I believe. So yeah. So if you haven't seen the very short trek and you don't want spoilers, go and watch it, then come back and watch this, and then go and watch Salad Fingers as well. And then, I mean, you'd be cleansing yourself with Salad Fingers, I think, will be after watching Worst Contact. Worst Contact, is it the worst? The worst very short trek so far for you, Alastair?
It might be. and it already has really tough competition for that. I thought things were maybe picking up with last week's one. I liked it better than the first week's one.
Mhm.
I wasn't blown away by it by any means, but I thought maybe we were heading in the right direction. And Worst Contact has brought my opinion of this series crashing back down again. What were your overall feelings towards it, Stu?
Uh, very so. For me, it's still not as bad as the first one. Because I mean, so to be that tone deaf as that first one I felt is just kind of inexcusable for Star Trek. So yeah, so 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is 3.
I just thought it followed that. Just about.
That sort of makes sense. Well, let's start what we did like about this. So yeah, what was a positive takeaway for you from this?
I feel like the positives kind of we retread them every week, right? Like the animation is really good. Like it captures the feel of the animated series so well. And that little introduction where they've done the distortion through the soundtrack for it, that's still an amazing few seconds that you get at the start of these. The voice work is still excellent because it's still, first-rate Star Trek cast members contributing it. But there's only so much we're going to be able to say these things about this series before viewers are hitting the fast forward button. And aside from that, I really didn't have much else good to note about this one. I mean, I see on internet forums and in the chatter about this that some people seem to be really enjoying these. Good for them. It's still Star Trek at the end of the day, even if it's not canon, it's got the Star Trek name on it. So nice to see people enjoying it. I also see an increasing segment of fandom who are vocally not really enjoying these and have fairly similar issues, I think, to us with them. So I definitely feel we're not alone in our grumbles about this. But hey, if you're out there and you're really enjoying them, good for you. Why not? It's all a matter of taste. So that's my very short, good recap. Stu, how about your good recap on this?
So, I mean, I agree with you. I think the animation, the sound design, but they're consistent things throughout it. And I think that's going to just stay the same throughout. So I wanted to mention something specific to this episode. And the fact that we had Frakes and Gates McFadden in it, it's just really nice to have them reprising their roles, of course. And I don't know if you noticed, but Dr. Crusher had 3 pips, so she was full commander, which puts it in the last 2 seasons of Next Generation.
Good catch, Stu. How did the Stardate do for that? I wondered if you knew off the top of your head whether they'd gotten that right or not.
I hadn't. Did they even mention a star date? If they did, I missed
one
it.
At the start. So
right.
Stu is much better than me at catching these little details usually. So I was waiting to pick his brains. I should have done some homework on it. But maybe one of our viewers can tell us in the comments, did the star date line up with Beverly being a full commander? We want to know.
I'll be doing my research after this, I can assure you. Because I'm that geeky. But yeah, so just Riker and Crusher. It's a bit odd being an away team of 2, but they're both commanders, so hey, they can handle anything.
You're nicely kind of segueing me into my bad list potentially here. Is there anything else good you want to say before I pick up on your last thoughts there and move on?
Well, I do like to I like to include honourable mentions with our good, bad, and batshit. But in terms of good, no, it was shit really. So it's hard to pick something good.
So picking up on your good points, I almost did the same as you. I almost went to say, well, it's great to see the TNG cast here, great to see Frakes and great to see Gates McFadden. And whilst it is really nice that they contributed to this, they're utterly squandered. I actually went back and rewatched the short again just to make sure that there is no reason they couldn't be anyone else from any of the other bridge crews. There is nothing unique to their characters. There is no point in it being them over being someone else, save for the sake of it being them. It really tells that you mistakenly said there's an away party of two. There's a third guy who we don't recognize, who has absolutely nothing to say, who just stands
Oh,
around in the
yes.
background through the episode.
So
Another,
much so I'd forgotten him.
yeah, and rightly so. What's he doing there behind, besides being, I don't know, something to draw into the picture. And so yeah, so I went from feeling like yourself, like great to have them back, to like just what a shame. They when you watch it, if you're looking for character, looking for a reason for it to be them, anything and sort of noticeably enjoyable about it, specifically being them, there's nothing. This could be Janeway and Neelix, it could be Kira and Quark, it could be anyone from any of the shows, and it wouldn't make a difference to what the characters are saying or doing, or the stories unfolds. And so sadly I shunted that from my good list to my bad list, because at the point where they're being so badly wasted, I'm more kind of sad to see them recurring in that way than happy to see them there. I think what a waste of talent.
I think that's a very, very, very fair comment. Yeah, it did have a very generic feel to it, didn't it? So
Extremely generic, extremely generic. I mean, it was Star Trek in the sense that it was a first contact. There was some obviously there's visual throwbacks in these, but it's very, very thin, as we've complained about some of the previous ones of these as well, for what qualifies it to be Star Trek. There's not really much to latch onto there.
yes. Do we think that the writer has actually really watched Star Trek to the point of understanding it, or watched a couple of episodes to kind of get enough of an understanding to think he can write stuff for it?
It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, I suspect that the crew working on it are probably fairly well versed in Star Trek, and it's a conscious decision to tell these stories, these short, extended gags essentially that run across one episode of these very short treks. And I get very confused about who is the target audience for this. This week, for example, another thing on my bad list is that this joke of the idea of like, oh, these aliens that we made first contact with have these gross out customs, or this first contact is going very badly and we dislike some of their habits. And this is like, it's a joke that's been done on the show a lot before. We talked about this last week with the Spock one, where it's a similar thing again, where it's not that there's no humor in having a laugh at the idea of like, oh, they microwave fish and they wipe their boogers and everything, and there's some humor there, but the idea of difficult first contacts has been done many times on the show, a lot better than this, with a lot more subtlety and depth and genuine sort of well executed comedy. I think part of my problem is that I'm not finding these particularly funny. And as I said earlier, more power to people who have enjoyed these. Humor is subjective, but it's not doing it for me. I think the main shows have done the humor of awkward first contact much better. So yeah. What about you, Stu? Any bad points that I've skipped over here?
For me, the biggest one, I think I made a big thing last time about, but I'm not a fan of toilet humor, and although this technically wasn't toilet humor, it was of that ilk. It was cheap, and there was no wit to it. It was just cheap. And as you absolutely rightly say, difficult first contacts has been, and it's been done well on the show. And it actually put me in mind of an Enterprise episode where the kind of disgusting bodily thing was subverted. In fact, there's two Enterprise episodes I can think of. Might have been the same one. Not sure now. I would have to check. But there's the one where Archer's dog pisses on a sacred tree.
Oh yes, yeah.
And there's the one where, and it might be the same one, where they're incredibly offended by people eating out in the open when they visit the Enterprise.
Yes. And it's interesting that you bring these up because I did see someone on the internet somewhere making the point that it's interesting to think that this is maybe somewhat what First Contact was like for the Vulcans in the film First Contact when they encountered the disgusting humans for the first time. But I mean, unfortunately, that kind of interesting view on this short is something that you have to bring to this to this episode. You know, it's not something that the episode offers up to you in any way, which is a shame because it's, you know, it's someone on the internet with sort of one step of elaboration beyond the pitch of this one has come up with something, you know, an idea that's much more intriguing than what the writers have given us here, I think, you know.
Yes, but that's my prime bad is just kind of bodily functions. I just don't find them funny. that's
Well,
it.
and I mean, it's certainly like it's for me, it's painfully obvious and straightforward the way it's done here as well. It's just, yeah, doesn't do it for me. Clearly doesn't do it for you, Stu. Shall we
No.
recap on anything that you felt was batshit about this short?
Well, before we do, I mean, I could mention so many bad things about this episode, but I do want to mention one particular honorable mention because you made the comment earlier about, you know, there are going to be people working on this who like know and understand Star Trek. I'm going to challenge that because Beverly calls Riker Bill. Bill?
Oh,
Not
yes.
Will, Bill. Now,
Yeah.
he does get called Bill in a very, very early episode of The Next Generation once. It's possible it was like a really deep cut Easter egg to that, but I really don't think it's that clever or that. I think, oh, his name's William. I bet they call him Bill then. You know, it's that kind of.
Interesting. Stu, that's a great little catch in terms of like how, yeah, and yeah, you know, as you say, how sort of dedicated the team is to knowing their Star Trek to create these very short tracks. Interesting. I didn't notice that.
Well, that's it. If it was people who know and love and understand Star Trek, somebody somewhere would have said, excuse me, but you'll find that she wouldn't call him Bill. She would call him Will, because
Well,
I hope you
and
know,
it's
don't
a
know why
really
I'm doing a
obvious
silly
one, isn't
voice,
it?
but you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, because you know, some people might say, well, that's minutiae. You know, it's you know, it's one character's a shortening of one character's name. But I mean, he's called Will Riker so frequently throughout Next Generation and films and card series that you know it's not a small thing. It is something that should be really obvious and really noticeable to someone coming to work with his character. Um, Great catch, and yeah, it's certainly you know I hadn't thought of that as a you know a reason to question the knowledge of the writing team, but I think you're right that there's a big question mark over why that is the way it is in this one. So good spot.
Thank you. Batshit. For me, the batshit one is so they blew up the warp drive. Is this species not keep records or write things down? Can they not just build another one? That's that's out there for me. I was reaching with my batshit, I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not surprising because I mean, all of the very short treks are desperate for you as an audience member to say the whole thing is batshit. My gosh, that's the zaniest 4 minutes of short animation I've ever watched in my life. You know, it's groveling with you in terms of how it's deploying the humor to find it zany and find the and to elicit laughs from you on the basis that it's really wacky and in your face, and you know, and that makes it hard to pick out batshit moments because the truth is actually that most of these are just really quite boring because they're not particularly novel. There's not really much new about them. They're very lazy in how they recycle old ideas or themes that have been explored in the past in Star Trek. And so, yeah, you know, shrug of my shoulders for the batshit with this one. Yeah, another week of fingers crossed for next week on very short treks from me, I'm afraid, Stu. Yeah.
You don't have anything for the batshit.
Well, you know what? For the sake of the creative team, the whole thing, wasn't it crazy? They microwave fish. I mean, imagine how disgusting that will be for the crew. And they wipe their boogers on everything. That's just totally batshit and zany. Can you imagine touching a control panel covered in boogers? What a laugh riot! I'm exhausted with my own sarcasm here, Stu. I just, thumbs down for very short treks this week, and the whole thing is just desperately non-batshit in a very bad way.
So not so much batshit, just shit.
Nail on the head. Let's call it that.
Well, one of the good aspects that we can look at is that there are only 2 more of these.
I'm still really holding out hope for the Helix one. I really want Ethan Phillips to get a good bit of humor in that one, but poor Jonathan Frakes and Gates McFadden did not get treated well this week. So maybe I'm hoping for too much. We shall see.
No, and let's not forget George Takei is in one as well. I'm really nervous about that. I mean, George is just like he's royalty, you know. Yeah. Oh well, we'll see what we see next week, and viewers, you can join us next week when we'll be sitting through another one of these terrible things for your enjoyment, for your delectation, and to see whether or not you agree with us. You can let us know if you agree with us, of course, or your views on this very short trek or the others by dropping a comment below. We do like to hear what you think. So yeah, join us next time. There'll be a Lower Decks episode 4, season 4, episode 4. But good words, good, bad, and batshit. Before then, anyway. So keep your eyes peeled for that. In the meantime, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.